Hey guys, it's Jordan here from Switchwatch, back again with a review of Deep Ones on the Nintendo Switch. Thanks to Sometimes You for providing this review copy so I can tell you guys if it's worth your hard-earned cash or not. Today's question is, what was your first video gaming machine? Let us know in the comments below. Let's get on with it. I have to admit, when faced with the huge abundance of potential games to review, Deep Ones instantly stood out from the crowd. Its visual style, harkening back to the ZX Spectrum games of old, had me intrigued. I mean, I didn't think it would be good. Its publisher has a less than stellar track record on the Switch, plus it has a price tag that instantly means they don't particularly have much confidence in it. But with an open mind, I went in. The story is quite minimalistic as you'd expect from a small retro-inspired game. You are piloting your small submarine, minding your own business when your ship gets gooed up by an unknown green substance. As you step out in your diving gear, brush in hand, your submarine is taken by a giant unknown sea monster, leaving you flying off and to the seabed. Without much more explanation or dialogue, you set off on an adventure on the bottom of the ocean. I know it's retro and simple, but I would have liked something a little more to push me along with the ride. There are some sort of cutscenes here and there, and even a bit of dialogue later in the game, but it could have done with it being throughout the game. The audio isn't quite in line with the looks of the game. Sadly, it's not a retro authentic soundtrack as you may hope, especially considering the ZX Spectrum really did have its own chiptune feel to it. Instead, we have more ambient, atmospheric soundtrack that supports the underwater theme very well. In that regard, it's a little less noticeable than I would have liked, but I can't complain because it's genuinely not a bad effort. As you will have gathered by now, the visuals are rather striking. It's what drew me to the game in the first place. I wasn't around when the ZX Spectrum was in many a British home, but I'm a sucker for something a bit different. Usually retro games head straight to the NES for their visual comfort zone, so it's nice to see a game head in a different retro direction. The distinct colour of the cyans and the magentas is surprisingly nice and simple. I'm sure it's a bit too simple for some, but it's better than having the same old retro visual style, right? I honestly like it. It's a bit dark at times, sometimes so much so that you can't see the next ledge that you're supposed to jump to. I do like the way the plants light up the environments in their different colours. I'm surprised at how much I can appreciate something so simple. Later on it gets more ambitious with its backgrounds, with shipwrecks and stuff, and I can see a nice bit of work went into this aspect of the game. The gameplay is rather basic though. You move around the 2D environment, jumping over gaps and enemies with the A button, and that's about it for the first part of the game. Very soon though, you'll pick up a gun which you will need to defeat enemies with the Y button. What will instantly hit you about the gameplay is just how slow it is. You're underwater, sure, but your jump is meager at best, and your gun takes an absolute age to shoot a second bullet. It's borderline painful. Not only that, but you can't even shoot while jumping, which is an incredible annoyance when enemies are generally on different levels to you. The mechanics just don't feel right from the off. It's 3 hits and you're dead. Thankfully, checkpoints are nicely frequent, which also replenish your life, as well as provide your revival location after you inevitably perish, usually from misjudging a jump. The platforming is one of those games where you swear on your life that you pressed the jump button at the perfect time, but end up just walking off a cliff instead and looking like a complete idiot. It's definitely retro, but in the wrong way this time. It's no Shovel Knight, I'm telling you. There is a bit of change up in the gameplay department here and there. You'll be fighting a few bosses like a school of sharks or a pirate king, and while the game's heart is in the right place, these boss fights end up more of an exercise in patience rather than adding anything to the game. They're slow, and the clunky controls make them the tougher parts of the game. If you die, you have to do it all from the beginning. Fair enough, but when it's this slow and takes so long to actually get into the action, you struggle for motivation to rally and do it correctly next time. Later on you'll get the chance to ride a seahorse in a shooter kind of genre, as well as switching your gun for a cutlass and a dash, which, as you'd imagine, makes things worse in the combat department. As far as level design goes, it's a completely mixed bag. Sometimes there are nice, well laid out platforming sections with some nice hopping on popping bubbles or between moving manta rays. Simple, standard, but enjoyable stuff. But then the game decides to blow your brains out with boredom by pressing forward to walk 15 minutes as you spam your gun to take out the easy enemies. It's genuinely uninspired at times. Value wise, you're looking at a cheap $4.49 and £4.49. So it's on the cheaper end of things, and for a couple of hours gameplay, I think it's pretty well judged, even if I don't think its quality indicates a purchase. It's one of those games that you'll probably buy on a whim, Sunday afternoon, looking for something a bit different, and if it's on sale, it might be a cheap impulse buy. I still don't think it's worth it though. Overall, Deep Ones is not a very deep game. It's as simplistic as its visual inspiration, with slightly awkward and clunky mechanics. I can appreciate the visual style and a nostalgia trip for those pioneering gamers in the mid-80s, but standing as a game on its own, it's just a little too uncooked and not particularly compelling to play despite the potential. A mixed bag of level design, plus controls being too stiff and unresponsive for my liking. It's short, but cheap, so it's not the end of the world if you think it looks interesting, but for me, it's below average as far as the gameplay goes, although other things around Deep Ones do rescue it somewhat, making it not an entirely wasteful experience. I would give Deep Ones a 4.5 out of 10. Thank you ever so much for watching this review of Deep Ones. I hope you've enjoyed and found this useful. If you're a regular Switch watcher, then hit that like button and leave a comment below answering the question of the day. What was your first gaming device or console? For me, it was the Super Nintendo. If you're new here, then consider hitting that subscribe button for more awesome Switch content like this. We would love it if you did that. And finally, head over to the website switchwatch.co.uk for news, reviews, and features. It's well worth a daily look, as always. I've been Jordan from Switchwatch, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.